What is up, all you Faceoff fanatics, and welcome back to the Faceoff Zone podcast, a podcast dedicated solely to the faceoff position in lacrosse. I'm your host, John Bodner, and I'll be breaking down and covering all the upcoming big faceoff storylines in this 2022 college lacrosse season. On this episode, I'm going to be diving deep into the Patriot League Conference. If you didn't listen last week, I talked Big Ten Conference. Week before that, ACC. So if you haven't listened to those episodes yet, please go give that a listen. And today, we're going to talk about some of the big heavyweight face-off guys in the Patriot League this upcoming 2022 season. So buckle up. If you haven't already, please give Faceoff Zone a subscribe on YouTube or a follow on Instagram or TikTok so you can see all the upcoming full game face-off highlights I plan on showing this season. So let's get this thing rolling again and let's dive deep into the zone. All right, so let's jump right back into this thing. I don't want to waste anybody's time. I know we're all busy. So let's talk Patriot League. Why did I choose Patriot League right after I did ACC and Big Ten? Well, listen, the Patriot League's interesting. Out of all 9 teams, there's only one team really losing their primary faceoff guy from last season, and that's Boston University. So everybody's coming back. All the guys who took the majority of the faceoffs last season in this Patriot League are all coming back. And to me, that's pretty interesting. Certainly with last year, everybody kind of learning getting used to the new rules, the new stand-up neutral grip rules. There were some growing pains with some teams. There were certainly some guys who started out slow and picked it up as the season went on. So I'm very excited to kind of see how some of these guys now look going into this upcoming 2022 season here. So let's just kind of jump in. I did kind of talk Loyola in the first episode, but I'm definitely going to dive a little bit deeper into what kind of what's happened over there lately. But let's start with Navy. Okay, Navy is a team that is certainly on the rise. I mean, if you're involved in the club world and the recruiting world, Navy has just been making some serious splashes with their grad classes, their 22s and their 23s. They're picking up some high level recruits. And I was looking on their roster this morning, and it's just crazy to me how many freshmen and sophomores they have on their roster this upcoming season. They have, I think, only 6 or 7 seniors, maybe a little bit more, but really the majority are freshmen and sophomores. So they're certainly going to get a lot of experience this year. I don't know how good they're going to be this year. I know they have great coaches over there. They were 6-3 last season. They got a couple votes for the preseason top 20. So listen, they're still going to be legit, but I don't know as far as some of these other Patriot League teams. Their chances of winning the Patriot League this year, we'll see. But Navy, let's talk about their face-off guys. Last season they lost in the first round. They kind of got mopped by Loyola. But they were still 4-2 in conference. They beat Army. They beat Bucknell. They kind of beat the teams they were supposed to beat on paper, lost to the teams that, on paper they were probably supposed to lose to. They didn't really – no big, huge upsets really for Navy last year. Like I said, tons of sophomores and freshmen. But let's get into their face-off guys. Let's talk about Nick Barry. He's a senior. Nick Barry, he wasn't really their primary guy. He took 27 faceoffs last year, was 7 out of 27, played in 3 games. I'm curious to see. Maybe he's been working hard. We might see a little bit of Nick Barry this year. But their primary guy was Jacob Jaraz. I'm probably saying his last name wrong, but He took 132 faceoffs last year, won 71 of them for 54%. Had 31 ground balls, no points, no goals or assists or anything. Just kind of, going down some of his games. He was 4-9 against Bailey Savio back in their first game back. I guess that was last February, like late February. And then in the tournament, he kind of got worked by Bailey. He was 7 of 22. So he kind of struggled a little bit with Savio. He was 4 of 12 against Mike Sisselberger last year at Lehigh. And then he strung together a couple nice games. He was 10 of 17 against Army's faceoff guy, Graber. Beat up on Lafayette a little bit, 14 of 21. So, Jacob Giraz is a guy who I expect to kind of see, as their guy, that first game of the season. I watched a little bit of their tape last year. Again, they did well against the guys that, they were supposed to kind of do well against. And then, they kind of struggled against some of these heavy hitters like Loyola and Lehigh. So they have, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have 6 faceoff guys on the roster right now. So they had Nick Berry, who I just talked about, Jacob Giraz. Let's talk. Who's their next kind of guy here? They have a freshman, Anthony Gobriel. I believe he's from Texas, super athletic, really good. I heard he could have maybe have been a D1 football player. He was that good down there in Texas. We all know how good Texas football is. They have a junior, Nate Hammond, who got some time last year. He got in a couple games. I know he was adjusting. He's a Philly guy. I know he was adjusting to the new rules. So I expect him to kind of take a step up this year and maybe get some more opportunities. Michael Lacasso or Labasco, he's a sophomore. Again, I with Jacob Giraz kind of taking most of the face-offs last year, I don't know too much. There's not much tape on these guys, and if you want to watch tape, it was from a couple years ago when they were all knee down. So I don't know. I'm curious. They have a pretty decent out-of-conference schedule before they kind of get into the Patriot League gauntlet. They are playing. I see Hopkins right in the middle of the Patriot League play. They're playing Hofstra, and Hofstra has a face-off guy with Brian Herber. They start out the season against Mercer, who Mercer has a great, I think, a huge sleeper in Ashton Wood. I've got a lot of respect for Ashton Wood at Mercer. He's definitely legit. So we'll see how Navy does. Again, like I said, they're super young. Maybe they'll pull off a couple upsets this year, but I hopefully some of these younger face-off guys can kind of come in, with Jacob Giraz and, maybe make some noise too. So I don't have much on Navy, to be honest with you. I'm excited to watch them. They're certainly going to be extremely good in the next couple of years. But for right now, they're kind of in the middle of the pack, in my opinion, as far as Patriot League goes. And that includes kind of face-off wise. Unless I'll certainly be watching, and I would love to see some of these guys really step up and make some noise against Loyola and obviously Lehigh. And I like the Army guy too. So stay tuned. We'll see. This is so Navy's my first kind of team here in my Patriot League breakdown. Coming up next, let's talk Bucknell. All right, so let's get into our next Patriot League team here, and let's talk about Bucknell. Bucknell, 2-6 last year. They were 1-5 in the Patriot League. Not a great season. They lost one of their best players, Tommy Sopko. He transferred. Bucknell, we'll see how they do this year. I don't know much about their actual team, but, their only win last year was Lafayette. So, they got nowhere to go but up. But let's get into their face-off guys here. Let's talk about senior Nick Cravato. He was kind of their primary guy. He's been a 3-year starter. They've won. He played in all 8 games for them last season. Took 144 face-offs, won 64 of them for 44%. And out of 64 of those wins, he had 19 ground balls. So yeah, definitely had some help on the wings a little bit. Cravato, he was 10 of 24 against Sisselberger last season in their first game, and then 9 of 32 in their second game. He was 5 of 14 against Bailey Savio. So, against the two kind of, older guys, it's kind of the premier guys in the conference, he kind of struggled with. But then, he did well. He was 7 of 18 against Colgate. Then he was over 50 against Navy and Lafayette. So, I would expect, he's definitely hungry to kind of redeem himself against the Loyolas and Lehighs. And, I know I would imagine he wants to kind of end his career at Bucknell on a high note and wants to go after some of these guys a little bit. So, I would imagine we're going to see Cravato coming, right out of the gate in that first game. Let's go down the roster a little bit here. They have a junior in Connor McCusker, who also played in all 8 games last season, kind of serving as the backup role to Cravato. He took 48 faceoffs last year, won 24 of them, only 5 ground balls. So, he was 8 of 12 against Loyola back in March, which is very impressive. But again, 48 faceoffs, not that, I just with the Patriot League teams playing more games this year, I'm sure we'll see a little bit more McCusker. Couple other guys here, Danny Striano, a sophomore. Brendan Coyle, another faceoff guy. I just made a note, excellent mullet on his website picture here. So a couple guys didn't really get any action last season, but hey, maybe they've been working hard. Maybe they'll maybe they'll step in, make some noise. I've seen some crazier things happen, and then they have a freshman. They got Blake Burchell, and he was a pretty high recruit, a lot of, well known around the club circuit last year. He's a Brunswick School, Connecticut guy. So, Brunswick School, they finished 4th in the country last year, so that's certainly nothing to slouch at. He had a monster season for them facing off, so definitely has some experience taking some, high-level face-offs. A couple of his games were televised last year, so, he's got that, high game experience, with some pressure. So Blake Burchell, he might be a guy that, maybe hurdles some of these guys. Maybe he'll get some early opportunities this year. I'm excited to see. So, Bucknell, like I said, they have nowhere to go but up right now. I'm looking at their schedule. They start off with Mercer as well, Ashton Wood. So that'll be a really good test. Then they get into Robert Morris. They play Marist, who has some good face-off guys. And then in March they play kind of Penn State before they get into their Patriot League gauntlet. So some good tests. We'll see how it all shakes out for them. I'm curious to kind of see how Cravato, comes, looks, right out the gate against Ashton Wood. So we'll see. That's all I pretty much have on Bucknell. So we'll stay tuned. We'll see how the Bison look. So coming up next in the Patriot League breakdown here, we got a lot. I didn't realize how many teams there are in the Patriot League. There's a lot of teams here. So let's get into Lafayette coming up next. All right, so let's get into our next Patriot League team here. Let's talk Lafayette. Lafayette, another team that has nowhere to go but up. They were 0-11 last year, 0-8 in their in Patriot League play. Lafayette, they're doing a lot of good things over there. They have a great head coach in Pat Myers. They're bringing in some really good younger players. Their recruiting classes are definitely getting stronger and stronger. And they have the returning Patriot League Rookie of the Year. Peter Lehman was a freshman attackman for Lafayette last year, had a monster season. He's super legit. They also had another freshman starting on attack, Charlie Kniff. He's a local Philly guy as well, and he is certainly nothing to scoff at either. So I do think the future is definitely looking brighter in Easton. They have this I follow them on social media. They have this brand new, sick lacrosse building being built and everything. So stay tuned on the Leopards. They're going to get better. But let's talk about this upcoming season. Let's talk about their face-off guys. Everything I'm hearing right now, it sounds like junior James Turco is going to kind of be the number one so far. James Turco, his sophomore season last year, he took 122 face-offs and won 58 of them. He was almost 50%. He was like 48%. 21 ground balls, played in all 9 games. He's from the Hill Academy. He played up at the Hill Academy where Inacio went up in Canada, but he's like a New York guy. Again, around 50% on the season. He was over 50% against BU, Bucknell. I have him down 7 of 11 against Loyola during the season at 1.2, which is very solid. And then he didn't play though in both games against Mike Sisselberger. So I guess he was hurt or something, maybe COVID. But he, for whatever reason, when Lafayette played Lehigh last season, Turco didn't get a shot at Sisselberger. So that'll be interesting this year. I did watch Lafayette a couple times last year. Their highlights are up on the YouTube channel. And Turco, you could tell, I remember Turco when he was in high school, extremely dominant knee down guy. Took a little bit longer to adjust to these new rules, I feel like. And he was a bit on the heavier side last year. Last season's roster, it said he was 5'11", 195. And this season, it says he's 5'11", 185. So, listen, losing 10 pounds, it's certainly impressive. Everything I'm hearing, he's in just so much better shape this upcoming season. He's really been working on his body, and he's already got just crazy fast hands. The problem was his feet last year. I mean, he just needed to be a little bit more explosive after the whistle and just needed to get in better shape, it kind of looked like. So I think he really worked on that this upcoming this past year in the off season, and I think he's going to definitely take a step up this season. Everything that I'm kind of hearing. So James Turco, I think he'll sounds like he's going to be the number one. We'll see how he does against some of these heavy hitters, the Loyolas, the Lehighs. I can't wait to see it. So let's go down this roster here. Let's talk about Aiden Kelly. He was a freshman last year, got a lot of time. Now he's going into his sophomore season. He is a Maryland guy, little shorter than Turco. He's about 5'8", $180, it says here. Took 109 faceoffs, though, last season, and he won 35 of them. Those numbers don't really do it justice. So it says he, 32%, but he actually, he put together some nice games last year. He had 17 ground balls, 7 of 11 against Loyola. That's certainly impressive. I mean, really the only his kryptonite last season, Aiden Kelly's, was, since Turco couldn't play, in both games against Lehigh, Aiden Kelly stepped in and, you can imagine, as a freshman going and playing Lehigh twice against Mike Sisselberger, who was just hungry to, just wanted to, he was on his killing spree last year. Aiden Kelly was 11 of 51 against Mike Sis last season. So, struggled a little bit. I mean, he's got nowhere to. He's got nothing to lose going into this season. So we'll see. We'll see how he does. This upcoming season. So Aiden Kelly, solid. Listen, as a freshman in the Patriot League, it's certainly it's not a small task. So he came in and battled. So I'm hearing he's kind of the number 2 again going into this season, kind of right behind Turco there. But I'm sure he'll see plenty of opportunities this upcoming season, just with Lafayette playing a lot more games this year. So keep our eye on Aiden Kelly. And then they have a junior, Dean Carnival, a South Jersey guy, super athletic. He's kind of a counter guy. He can kind of switch it up, throw a little bit. Not the fastest clamper in the world, but he makes up for it just with some of his other moves. He took 65 faceoffs last year, won 28 of them, 13 ground balls. I mean, he had 13 ground balls. He almost had more ground balls than the other 2 guys. I mean, Turco had 21 ground balls with 58 wins, and Aiden Kelly had 17 ground balls on 35 wins. So, 17, 21, and then you had Carnival, who only had 120. He had 28 wins, and he had 13 ground balls. So I don't know. I kind of read between the lines a little bit there. We'll see. Dean's a guy who, like I said, super athletic, crazy hard worker. He's like, from what I hear, a very, huge leader on the team. So Dean's another guy who, depending on matchups, we could certainly see Lafayette roll out there. So, and then they picked up a freshman, Evan Prince. Evan Prince, a Philly guy, Harriton High School from that Lower Marion area. Definitely, he's got a little bit of size on some of these other guys. I mean, Turco's 5'11", Kelly's 5'8", Carnival's 6 foot, and then you got Evan Prince, who's he's 6'2". It says 215, but I think he's a little less than that. I think he's like probably 205, 210. But he's a bigger body. There's no doubt about that. But again, I've known Prince for a number of years. He's certainly a very hard worker. He's another guy who wants to do whatever he can to help his team win. He's also got really good stick skills, for a face-off guy. So he's certainly. I wouldn't say he'd be a big liability on the field if he were to, stay on and try to maybe take the other faceoff guy to the house or if he gets stuck on defense. So, he played at a high school where they weren't too strong. So he literally, he never came off the field in high school. So I think that certainly helped him. He's certainly balanced as far as moves. He's not just like a clamper. He can kind of definitely throw some rakes, some counters at you. So going from Harriton High School though to a D1, to a D1 program, in the Patriot League, certainly an adjustment for anybody, but if anybody could take it on, definitely Evan could. He's a confident dude. So I'm curious to see if maybe he'll get some early opportunities if some of these other guys, some of these older guys are struggling. But we'll see. I'm confident we'll definitely be talking about Prince in years to come, down the road in the future. But he certainly has some good older guys to kind of learn from and practice with. So, like I said, Lafayette, they're nowhere to go but up. They got to focus on just getting that first win this year, and it starts with winning some faceoffs. So I think all these guys are going to certainly look better than they did last season. We'll see. If I'm a betting man, I think we'll see a heavy dose of Turco early this season, and if he keeps winning, he's I feel like he's he could definitely get the majority of them this season, but we'll see. Looking at their schedule, they got some they got Penn State early, February 5th. That'll be a great, test for them. They play Drexel. They play Rutgers. And then their last game of the season after they get after the Patriot League gauntlet, they play UVA. They're going down to Virginia. They're playing UVA. So, wow. I mean, what an experience that'll be for them. I mean, I don't know what the game will look like. Hopefully they compete and can, make some noise, but certainly for Faceoffs, for them to go down and get a crack at PD LaSalle, I mean, they've got to be all juiced up for that. So it doesn't get much better than that. So we'll see. Leopards, I think good things are coming out there in Easton, Pennsylvania, but we shall see. I know they're going out to Columbus, Ohio this weekend to scrimmage Ohio State. So I'm going to be certainly kind of trying to get my sources out there to give me some updates and kind of see how things are looking. So that's all I got on Lafayette in my Patriot League breakdown here. Coming up next, let's get into Army. All right, so let's get into our next Patriot League team here. Let's get into Army. Army, I mean, 7-4 last season. They were 5-3 in the Patriot League. I think they split with Loyola. They had a solid season. They're like Navy with their upcoming recruiting classes. They're certainly getting some really good players. I feel like younger just kids are kind of seeing the extraordinary benefits of going to a service academy and how really you're set for life, when you come out of one of these programs, and it's just going to get they're just going to continue to get better and better quality players, I feel like, as years go on here. So Army, let's get into their face-off guys last season. Let's talk about their primary face-off guy, and that was Stevie Graber. Stevie Graber, he was a sophomore last season, took 206 face-offs, won 108 of them, had 61 ground balls, scored 2 goals. Listen, Army played some good out-of-conference teams last season too. I mean, they played Syracuse, they played UVA. Graber was 1 over 50% against Syracuse last season. He was 3 of 8 against UVA. He was 8 of 13, it says here, against St. Joe's, against Zach Cole at St. Joe's. So all 3 of those games, between St. Joe's, UVA, and Cuse, I mean, that's good competition right there. He was 15 of 24 against Loyola in the Patriot League tourney. Even though they lost, he still had a pretty good game. He was over 50 against, Boston U, Holy Cross, Navy, Colgate. He was even 1 over. So, I mean, really his only kryptonite last season was Mike Sisselberger. He was 1 of 12 against Mike Sisselberger of Lehigh. But all in all, I mean, a pretty solid season. Stevie Graber, I remember a couple of his, he's super fast. Yeah, I mean, he can make you pay if he does get the ball out, nice and fast on you forward. I mean, he's kind of a lightning bolt out there. He can, he had a couple, I remember one goal specifically. It was, he was just lightning fast. So he's, I feel like he's going to probably be their primary guy this upcoming season. They have, again, they have a lot of face-off guys on their roster here. They have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm counting at least 4 guys here. So Graber, talked about him. Let's get into this other guy, junior James. He's a junior now, James Pryor. James Pryor, he's a big boy, 6'3", 210. He just looked like he came off Army's football field last last season. I mean, he's a big dude, kind of a change it up guy. If Graber was struggling, they threw Pryor in to kind of just muck it up and try to make it a ground ball. And most times if the ball was out on the ground, he's not scared to kind of use that big body and just kind of box out and just grab ground balls. So, I mean, James Pryor, he didn't even face off. I see here on his first 2 years at Army, he was more of like a transition / short stick D mid type player. So they threw him in at faceoffs last year. Justin Ward, one of their assistants, he does a great job with the faceoff guys. So, they threw him in as kind of a change up, and he did well. I mean, he's a tough dude. He went to St. Anthony's. He's a Long Island guy. Played in 10 games. He only took 31 faceoffs, but he won 9 of them. Had 12 ground balls on the year. He was actually 6 of 9 against UVA, which is pretty impressive. I don't know. I know he kind of went in kind of late in the game, but still, I'm pretty sure Petey took most of them in that game. So 6 of 9 against UVA. Pryor's a guy who, his first year really ever facing off, in college. So certainly I feel like, if he does get more opportunities this season, he'll certainly be more confident at it. And the guy is just a total specimen. I mean, he's a just big, strong dude. So we might be seeing a little bit more of Pryor. So let's go down the roster a little more here. They have a pair of freshmen. Start with Will Coletti. Will Coletti went to Linganove High School down there in Maryland. Not much really on him. I was trying to look for some film. Couldn't really find anything. I do hear that he is competing with some of these, with everybody here, there up in West Point. He was a football and lacrosse player in high school. He returned punts. So, I mean, he's certainly a really good athlete. But we'll see how he adjusts to, the D1 grind and, playing some of these heavy hitters, if he gets some opportunities here in the Patriot League. So, Will Coletti is the first freshman here. And then they have a freshman from Culver, Alec Vaccaro. And Alec Vaccaro, big name, from back in the day in that club circuit. He was a very dominant knee down guy. I remember. I haven't seen him. I can't really speak on what he's been up to lately. He's a bigger guy, kind of like his, old team. Alex Stathakis at Denver is also a Culver grad, and it's actually weird. They're both number 37 this year, but he's a big, Vaccaro's a big guy, 5'10", 195. He's definitely a strong dude. We'll see. Again, very dominant knee down, but I'm curious to kind of see how well he's adjusted, how well he is on the ground. So stay tuned. We'll keep our eye on both these freshmen and see if they get some early opportunities. Because I tell you, Army's schedule. Army has a very strong out of conference schedule this upcoming season. I mean, they're playing UMass. UMass has a really good faceoff guy who we'll talk about. They're playing Rutgers. They're playing Syracuse. Their first 3 games. I mean, UMass, Rutgers, Syracuse. That's pretty tough. And then they're playing Cornell. So all really good teams before they get into, their Patriot League action here. So I don't know. Again, if I do think we'll kind of see Stevie Graber right from the jump. I expect him to look, he's certainly going to be a lot more confident going into this season, and we'll see. West Point is, I would love to see kind of West Point make some noise this year, and I do feel like they're certainly good enough to make the Patriot League tournament again this year, but I would love to see them in the NCAA tournament this year. So we'll see. We'll see what West Point can do. that's all I really got on Army right now. Let's get into BU. Let's talk Boston University coming up next. All right, so let's get into our next Patriot League team here. Let's talk Boston University. I mentioned earlier Boston University. They're really the only team in the Patriot League this upcoming 2022 season who lost their primary faceoff guy. And it's interesting. I mean, so they lost a pair of seniors. They lost Sean Chrisman, who took over 100 faceoffs last season, had a great career at BU. They lost Kevin Snyder, another guy who took a bunch of faceoffs, great career. So lost a good duo in those guys. And they brought, so they have 1, 2, 3, 4. They have 5 guys on the roster right now. A couple guys who were on the team last year. And they actually brought in 2 faceoff guys right out of the transfer portal, which we'll certainly talk about in a second here. So, some new faces that'll be facing off for Boston U this year. Last season they were 6-5. I feel like Boston U, they're still kind of regrouping and gathering themselves from losing Chris Gray to UNC. I mean, the fact that Chris Gray could still be playing for BU right now, I'm sure is still keeping some of those coaches up there up at night. But Boston U, they still had like I said, 6-5 last year. They lost to Army twice, beat Colgate twice, and then they ended up losing to Colgate in the Patriot League tourney, but beat Holy Cross. So listen, they didn't play Lehigh, I see here, because they kind of split up the Patriot League into like kind of separate kind of sections or something. But Boston U, let's see how they do this year. I mean, let's get into their face-off guys. Let's talk about one of the, Brian Garrity. Brian Garrity, he's a sophomore from Norwell, Massachusetts. Took 80 face-offs for BU last year. Was 27 of 80 with 9 ground balls. So he was around 34% on the season last year. He's a guy who got more opportunities kind of as the season went on. Certainly held his own, around 50% against Army last year, around 50% against Colgate. Bigger guy, 6'2", 208. I think having that freshman year under his belt, taking 80 faceoffs, I would imagine he's hungry for more. He's ready to kind of take that next leap. But we'll see. I mean, they brought in some really good guys too. So they have another guy who was on the roster last year, Harry Friedman. Only took 11 faceoffs, 2 of 11. We'll see. Maybe he can make a jump. But let's talk about some of their transfers they brought in. Let's start with Connor Calderon, junior. He's a junior. Connor Calderon. He, if you listened to the Big Ten breakdown last week, I mentioned Connor Calderon. He transferred from Maryland, kind of looking for that fresh start. Connor Calderon, I mean, he was one of the top ranked high school faceoff guys in the 2019 class. I mean, you want to talk dominant knee down faceoff guys. I mean, Calderon back in the day was, he was really good, very strong. And tough New York kid, went to Smithtown West, certainly a very strong public school up there in New York. He's a little bit on the smaller side. He's like 5'6", $165. So listen, I mean, adjusting to the new stand-up rules, was certainly, I'm sure, an adjustment for him. But like I said, these New York guys, they're crazy competitive. They're not. Connor Calderon wasn't about to. He wants to play, and I think he certainly, I would imagine, has a fire lit under him right now, and he's definitely hungry. And he's a guy who I'm very curious to see who BU will be rolling out this year. I think, certainly with playing more games this upcoming season, it might be a duo of guys or maybe a trio. We'll see. But Connor Calderon, I fully expect to see out there this season. And listen, we'll see how he looks. Let's get into their next transfer here, and that is sophomore Jax Popovich. And I don't know why it really says he's a sophomore on here, because he was a freshman last year at Richmond. And I don't even, from what I hear, I don't know if he was on the roster in the spring. I know I actually watched his on YouTube. There's somebody threw up a couple. I guess it looked like some fall inter squad scrimmages of Jax playing against some of these other Richmond guys. And listen, I mean, in 2020, Jax Popovich, he was ranked one of the top incoming Faceoff specialists. He was the class of 2020. He went to the Salisbury School up in Connecticut, very strong high school lacrosse program. Listen, for whatever reason, it didn't work out at Richmond. He was looking for a fresh start. BU scooped him up, and listen, I watched a couple of those, like I said, those inter squad scrimmages with Jax, playing against some of these Richmond guys, and listen, some of these Richmond guys are pretty quick, and Jax certainly looked like he was holding his own that day. Or maybe 2 days. I don't know how many different games it was, but he certainly had a lot of forward wins in them. A couple nice, going out the back door. I don't know how fast Jax Popovich is. I mean, he just, when he was winning, he certainly is always looking to kind of, get that ball down to the offense as fast as he can. So, again, I think, adjusting to the new rules, I think, since he didn't really play a full season of college lacrosse yet, I'm sure there may or may not be some growing pains at the beginning of this season if he does get some early opportunities. But he's another guy who I've heard. I mean, he works up in New York with Grenlian. Grenlian's always he says nothing but great things about Jax Popovich. So. He's a guy I think we'll certainly be talking about, for years to come at BU. Him and Calderon certainly, like I said, probably have fires lit under them. So I'm very excited to watch the first couple games of BU. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, and then they have another freshman here on the roster, Ben Ferrara, another New York guy from Bayville, New York. It says here he had 32 points in high school, so it sounds like he kind of stayed on the field a little bit after the face-off. He was a two-time all-county football player. He was conference player of the year. He was actually running back of the year in his conference. So, I mean, the guy, I would imagine he must be pretty fast, pretty tough. I couldn't really find much tape on him, but. Throw him in with these other guys. I mean, listen, BU certainly sounds like they have some guys some face-off guys who are ready to go, ready to play. So, and they're going to need it. I am looking at their schedule here, and they start off the season playing Bryant. Bryant certainly has, as we all know, some good face-off guys. They had a freshman duo last year who was super legit. Then they get into UMass. UMass has some great face-off guys. Harvard, Yale, Princeton. So, and then they get into the Patriot League. So, Boston U. We'll see how it goes. I don't know. If I was a betting man, I don't know. I don't know who they're going. I'm very curious to see who they're going to roll out as the starter in early February here. So, I'm sure we'll be talking about it down the road, but that's all I got for now on BU. So we'll see. So let's what do we got left here? Let's get into Colgate. We're going to talk Colgate coming up next. All right, so we're moving right along here. Let's get into our next Patriot League team. Let's talk Colgate. This is an interesting one. Colgate, 3-7 last season. They were 2-4 in Patriot League play. They kind of beat the teams they were supposed to beat, lost to the teams that they were kind of, on paper, kind of looked like they were supposed to lose to. They did lose to BU twice and then got them back in the Patriot League tournament. We all know it's kind of hard to beat a team 3 times. They lost to Lehigh twice. But, all in all, I think things are kind of on the rise over there at Colgate as well. They have, a lot of guys coming back this year. Let's talk about their face-off guys here. Let's start. Let's start with Thomas Colucci. Thomas Colucci played in 8 of the 10 games last season. I think he missed the first 2 games of the season last spring. Listen, Thomas Colucci had a sneaky good season. Not a lot of people really talk about him or probably really even know about Thomas Colucci, but he's a junior. I thought he was a junior last year, but he was actually only a sophomore. So he's coming into his junior season. Certainly a lot more confident. He took 186 faceoffs last season. He won 100 of them. So he was around 54% on the season. Had 50 ground balls. He had 2 goals, 1 assist. He actually had 1 goal against Lehigh at the end of the season last year against SIS, and that was impressive. Over 50% against BU. He kind of handled them. Took care of Bucknell. He split with Army, split with Graber. That was a pretty good game. They both won 12 faceoffs. He absolutely mopped Holy Cross. But again, Colucci's big. Colgate played Lehigh twice. In 2 games, he was 17 of 37 against Lehigh, and most of those faceoffs were against Mike Sisselberger. I think he got a couple against Gaffney as well. So, 17 of 37. That's 46%. That's not bad. It's really not bad. And when you look at everybody that Colucci played, he was other than Lehigh. He was over 50 against everybody. It was just those kind of games against Lehigh that really brought his. That really brought his percentage down, and everyone tells me, and it's easy to see on tape too. He's really good at counters. He's not afraid to throw his body around. He's pretty good on the ground. I'm curious to see if his hands got any faster. If he's going to start beating more guys with kind of just off the whistle with speed. But, I'm sure he's been working crazy hard. Everything, Andrew Vossler, they picked, he was there. He helps out with he's an assistant coach, helps out with their, he runs the face-off unit over there. Really did a nice job for them this past season. I feel like Colucci's a guy who will certainly be talking about more this season at the tops of the Patriot League. I know. Everybody's, I know Vossler's pretty high on him right now, and rightfully so. Really, when you break down his numbers, he had a pretty impressive sophomore season. He's a Jersey guy. He went to Seton Hall Prep, good program in New Jersey. So we'll see. Colucci's a guy that they have kind of, as their number one. I'm hearing right now. But let's talk about another guy here. Let's talk about sophomore Brian Wilmans, who he was a freshman last year, played in 7 games. Like I said, with Colucci being out the first 2 games last season, Wilmans got the start. And he actually, first game of the season, he went 16 of 20 against Robert Morris, which is very impressive. And then the next game, they play Albany, and he splits. He goes 9 of 18. So Willman's, I mean, and then his playing time kind of dwindled after that a little bit with Colucci being back. He only really got 3 to 4 faceoffs a game after that. But he still, I mean, to kind of as a freshman, I mean, he got some pretty good experience, all things considered. So listen, with Colgate playing more games this season, there's a chance, I expect we'll definitely see some more Willmans. But, we'll stay tuned. We'll see. They have Jack Budnewski, a sophomore. Don't know much on him. Didn't really get that much time last year, but we'll see. We'll see if he'll get some opportunities. They have... Let's talk about freshman Ethan Cronk. Ethan Cronk, another Jersey guy. He Ridgewood, New Jersey high school. He's a bigger dude. I mean, he's 6 foot, 205. Yeah, I mean, he's a big boy. I mean, super strong. Played for one of the best club teams in New Jersey, Leading Edge. So he certainly has some, some high. He played in some high level games, over the summer with Leading Edge. He was kind of a late bloomer as far as recruiting goes. I mean, he got scooped up by Colgate back in the fall of his senior year. He's got excellent technique. He works with Ragganese up in Jersey. I know they're always kind of getting some practice together, and I'm curious, maybe he may get some early opportunities this upcoming season. I'm interested to kind of see how he looks on the field, after the face-off. I watched a little bit of film on him, and if some of these guys are on him, I just feel like, I'm sure there might be, just as a freshman, he's got to kind of adjust to just being a D1 lacrosse player and kind of, developing, some stronger stick skills. But listen, Cronk is certainly legit. He's certainly a guy that we'll be talking about, down the road in the future. But they have, and then they have another freshman, Brett Reynolds from North Carolina. And, Brett Reynolds, I'm hearing he's certainly, competing with these other guys. Don't know too much about him either, but we'll see. I can't really speak on Brett Reynolds. I don't know much about him, but you never know. I've seen some freshmen, I've certainly talked about some freshmen who've come in and lit the world on fire. So maybe it might be one of these two guys. You never know. So that's all I got on Colgate. Well, you know what? Listen, actually, I didn't really get into their schedule yet. Wow. I mean, they're playing UNC. They might have the strongest out-of-conference schedule than any of these. I mean, they're up there with the Loyola and Lehigh's kind of out-of-conference schedule. I mean, they're playing UNC February 13th, High Point on February 11th. They're playing Hobart, and then they play Cornell. They play a couple Ivies. They're playing Cornell, Harvard. So, yeah, wow. I mean, they got some good ones here. So, certainly some good tests, before they get into some Patriot League play. So, listen, big opportunity for Colucci, big opportunity for some of these other guys. I mean, how could you not get fired up to play UNC and Cornell and Harvard and High Point? So we'll see. Let's keep an eye on Colgate, and let's kind of see how it shakes out for them this season. We're kind of moving down the, we only have about 3 teams left to talk about here. Let's get into Holy Cross coming up next. All right, so let's get into our next Patriot League team here, and let's talk about Holy Cross. Holy Cross, they got that new coach this past season, the Maryland assistant. I don't have it in front of me right now, but They were 2-4 last year. They only played 6 games. They're really 1-3 in the Patriot League. Their only win was against Lafayette. They played Syracuse randomly. They lost to Syracuse 15-6 last year. I remember watching that game. Again, 6 games, not a whole lot to really go on. We'll talk about junior Brendan McKenzie. He kind of took the majority of their faceoffs last season. Only, it was him and another guy really. But he played in all 6 games, only took 63 faceoffs. He was 24 of 63 for 38%. No points or anything, but he had 12 ground balls. Really, the only game he took 10 faceoffs or more was Colgate, and he took 10 that game. So, just not a whole lot of faceoffs for Holy Cross this past season. So, McKenzie, he's a smaller kind of guy. He's about 5'8". He's a grinder. I watched the Syracuse game last year, and he held his own a little bit. He's I feel like all these guys are going to be a little bit more confident this upcoming season. I'm interested to kind of watch a little bit more of Holy Cross this year because we really didn't see much on them. But they had a freshman last year also who got a lot of time for Holy Cross, Connor DePiero, another Massachusetts kid like McKenzie. Like I said, freshman last year, took 61 faceoffs. So McKenzie took 63, DePiero took 61. Connor won 30 of them, 30 of 61. He was about 49% last season. Had 16 ground balls. Again, no points. No points for Connor DePiero either. That's some impressive numbers. I mean, he beat up on BU. He was 14 of 15 against BU. But everything else was pretty light after that. Just not that many faceoffs. They was kind of splitting with McKenzie. But he also played in all 6 games like McKenzie. So we'll see. These guys had a whole off season. Whole off season to kind of work on their game and get stronger. So I'm curious to see who they're going to roll out as the starter this in a couple weeks. They have a Stuart Pollard, a California kid from St. Margaret's Episcopal. He played in only 3 games last year. I think his kind of claim to fame. He was 5 of 8 in the Syracuse game, which was pretty good. But really, I mean, that was it. He was 8 of 18 on the season. He only took 18 faceoffs. So who knows? Maybe Pollard's been working hard. They might get thrown up in the mix with these other guys, but I'm just going to kind of leave it at that. I mean, Holy Cross, they're another team that they're kind of under that new coach, they're kind of rebuilding, and I was looking up their schedule, and they don't even have their schedule up yet right now. So definitely take a lap on that. Holy Cross. I mean, it's January. I got January. Today's January 18th. So definitely got to get that schedule up soon. So I can't really talk about who they're playing out of conference yet, but I don't know. Let's leave it at that. We'll see how things shake out up at Holy Cross this year. I kind of, I'll be pretty shocked to see if one of these, DePiero or McKenzie can kind of hang with some of the heavy hitters in the Patriot League, but who knows? You never know. So I'll leave it there with Holy Cross. We're going to talk Loyola coming up next, so you're not going to want to miss that. All right, so we're moving right along. Let's talk about Loyola. Loyola, I talked about them at length in the first episode. At the time, I kind of thought they had the biggest question mark at Faceoff going into the 2022 season because I thought Bailey Savio graduated, and turns out he is coming back. He's a grad student. He's on the roster this upcoming 2022 season. Huge news for Loyola, for Greyhounds fans. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about Bailey real quick because if you want to, I'm not really going to get into the other Faceoff guys on the roster. If you want to hear more about who they have on the roster, definitely go back to the first episode and listen to Loyola. I kind of broke down some of their younger guys who I thought were going to kind of step up for Bailey this year, and they still might. I mean, just Bailey Savio, if they're smart, they're going to save him, for the Patriot League and hopefully NCAA tournaments. So I'm sure some of these younger guys are going to get, some opportunities early in the season and throughout the season. But I mean, at the end of the day, I still think we're going to get a heavy dose of Bailey Savio in his last season at Loyola. But Loyola, I mean, they're ranked number 7 right now in the preseason polls. Got a lot of really good guys coming back. I mentioned they have preseason first-team All-American Ryan McNulty, long stick midi, who's been on the wings of Loyola for seems like forever now, and he's certainly a human vacuum who will be helping Bailey when he needs it on the wings. And before I kind of talk about Bailey a little more, I mean, since our first episode, I found out that they also scooped up a really good short stick D mid who played last season for Richmond and has one of the coolest names in college, Mustang Sally. And Mustang Sally, I mean, the dude, he had some. I watched him play for Richmond last year, and I was like, not only is that a really cool name, but actually he's making some really ridiculous plays on the defensive end of the field and on the faceoff wings. I mean, he scooped up some pretty impressive ground balls last year for Richmond. So I don't know. When I heard the news that he transferred to Loyola, I'm like, so now you have Bailey Savio facing off. You got Ryan McNulty on a wing, and now you got Mustang Sally. And that's quite a face-off unit. I don't care who you're playing. I mean, you better hope you win extremely clean to yourself and hope that the ball doesn't get out too far after the whistle, because you got some serious firepower on the wings now for the Greyhounds. So going to be very interesting for Loyola this season. Like I said, with Savio coming back. I mean, Bailey Savio, he's the career ground ball leader at Loyola. So every ground ball he scoops up is just going to add to his career ground ball record. He has 349 ground balls right now. Took 344 faceoffs for Loyola last season. He won 178 of them. So he was a little over 50%. He was about 52% last year. Like I said, started out this season, still kind of adjusting to these new rules. I'll tell you what, though. I mean, he won 14 faceoffs and lost 17 faceoffs against UVA in the beginning of the season, and that was pretty impressive. That was the game right before he played Lehigh, where he struggled. As we talked about, he kind of struggled against Mike Sisselberger in the only. That was the only time they played Lehigh last season. He was 1 of 11 against Sisselberger in that game. But really, like I said, after that Lehigh game, I think something just kind of, a fire got lit under him. I mean, he beat up. I mean, just mopped the Navy guys, beat up Army. He actually lost. He's kind of struggled against Lafayette. He actually was a little under 50% against Lafayette, which is kind of random, but split with Georgetown, about 50% against Georgetown. And he was 8 of 14 against Duke in the semifinals, if you remember, in the NCAA semifinals. But at the game before that, in the quarterfinals, he did kind of struggle against Denver a little bit, but which I didn't realize, actually. I went back and kind of watched that. I watched the Faceoff highlights on my YouTube channel, and he was 7 of 28 against Denver in the quarters, and I didn't think it was that, I didn't think it was that bad. He won a couple at the end, which I just still have in my head, I guess. But so really only against Denver and Lehigh last year, Bailey, kind of struggled. But, out of the, I don't even know how many games he played. He played in they played a bunch of games last year. He was really only under 50% in 4 games. So, I mean, listen, you can't argue with that. That's impressive. He got better as the season went on. So I expect him to, to take another leap. I think he's going to have a big year. Like I said, with those new, his new wing, his wing guys are certainly elite. And I mean, look at their schedule. I mean, they start out the season, they open up February 12th against Maryland. Their first 3 games are Maryland, Hopkins, and Rutgers, all Big Ten games. I mean, it's ridiculous. Then they play Duke in March. And then they play Georgetown and they play Georgetown, which will be an awesome out-of-conference game. And of course, and well done by the athletic directors. They set up Lehigh as the last game of the season before the Patriot League tournament. So we'll have Lehigh versus Loyola as their last games of the season. So that will be awesome. That will be must-watch TV. So I mean, wow! We'll see what Loyola's certainly made of early against, like I said, those first 3 games of the season against those Big Ten teams. And then they got Duke. So I mean, just from a face-off standpoint, I mean, you got Maryland's, the 2 juniors we talked about last week, Naruski at Hopkins. You got, I don't know who they're going to roll out at first with Rutgers. It might be Sam Steven, the transfer from Mount St. Mary's. It might be Jonathan Eugenio, who was their starter last year. They got Riley at Georgetown. So, and then they got Naso at Duke. So what a test for Loyola this season. So I can't wait. It's going to be a fun year watching the Greyhounds. So I'll leave it at that. We'll stop there on Loyola, and we'll finish up here with Lehigh. So stay tuned. All right, so let's get into our last Patriot League team here, and let's talk about Lehigh. I assume everybody out there kind of knows who Lehigh's face-off guy is going into this upcoming 2022 season. I mean, Mike Sisselberger, just broke loose last year, almost 80% on the season, so, 79.5, shattered records. We all know it, ended up, covers of U.S. Lacrosse Mag. He's on the cover of U.S. Lacrosse Magazine. Unbelievable first year as a starter. Certainly a lot of eyes are on Mike Sisselberger this upcoming 2022 season compared to last year, when we all kind of thought Connor Gaffney was going to be the guy this time last year. But, if you haven't listened to the first episode yet, listen, Mike Sisselberger, all he does, is, he takes, he delivers in big moments, and, he loves high pressure faceoffs, and, nobody works harder than that guy. I mean, if you saw, a couple weeks ago, he just, he made the Lehigh wrestling roster. He started working out with like the Lehigh wrestlers, and it got serious, and he's like legitimately like competing with those guys, and he's so when he's not training for lacrosse, he's doing these crazy wrestling workouts and staying in just insane shape. So Mike Sisselberger, obviously we know we're gonna see a heavy dose of Mike Sis this year. As long as he's healthy, he's going to play. but it is a longer season this year. So against some of the maybe some of the out of conference games, or if these games kind of get a little out of control and Lehigh's up big, it might be smart to kind of preserve Mike, especially in those cold February and March months. If, like I said, if the time is right, maybe try to give some of these younger guys a couple opportunities to, give Mike a blow. And let's get into, we know about Mike Sisselberger. There's plenty of awesome highlight videos you can watch on my YouTube page of Mike. Let's get into some of their younger guys they have on the roster here. Let's talk about Matt Brock. Matt Brock, he only took 15 faceoffs. He only got in one game last year. That was against NJIT. It was 6 of 15. But, Brock is a guy who, Pennsylvania guy, he played for a strong club with Triple H. He played in the Under Armour. He was an Under Armour All-American. He played for Team Philly. His senior year, or his going into his senior year. He's a guy who certainly, listen, he gets to practice with Mike Sisselberger every day. He's going to get better. I saw him recently. He did look a lot stronger. He's a good athlete. He was a good linebacker in high school, so he's a tough kid. He's a guy who I think when Mike Sis needs, like I said, when Mike Sis needs to take one off, needs to take a couple off, I feel like Matt Brock could step in and certainly hold his own and compete. So Matt Brock, he is a sophomore this upcoming season, and then they have a freshman from South Carolina, Sean Dow, who he just dominated the South last year. He played for a pretty strong club, that 24/7. Who I think now it's Team 91 Carolina, but Sean Dow, all things I'm hearing, he's up at Lehigh, and he's got a pretty good stick. He's got pretty good stick skills. Obviously to come from the Carolinas to the Patriot League, I'm sure it's an adjustment. But he's a guy that, again, practicing with Brock and Sis, how could you not get better from that? So they have, those are the three guys, between Sis, Brock, and Dow. Those are the guys right now. But like I said, as long as Mike Sis is ready to go, he's going to be, he'll be must-watch TV. He took 283 faceoffs last year, won 225 of them, for almost 80%, 79.5%. Had 160 ground balls last year. 4 goals, 2 assists. He can let out some rockets. If you didn't see him on, Instagram that I posted, or, the TikTok or whatever. If he gets loose, he certainly can, he can make goalies pay. And he's definitely a threat after the whistle if he wins, if he wins one clean. So yeah, Lehigh, they're 11th in these preseason polls. I cannot wait for the Lehigh Loyola game, but let's talk about who else they're playing here. They got Georgetown in March. That'll be a fun one because, Mike Sis and James Riley are knew each other growing up. They've been training together for a while. So Georgetown will be a good one. They're playing not much. They're playing Cornell. That'll be a good one. They're playing Hobart. Shea at Hobart, solid. So, listen, we'll see. But, not much out of conference competition, but when they get into the Patriot League stuff, it's gonna. Listen, everybody's got Mike Sis circled, so it'll be a battle every game they play. So We'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. Like I said, must-watch TV for Lehigh this year. So I'll leave it at that. So that'll do it. I mean, that'll do it for our Patriot League breakdown here. Like I said, Patriot League, it's gonna be fun. All these guys returning, other than BU, every single primary Faceoff guy is back this upcoming season. So I'm curious to kind of see how they all do, especially against some of these. A lot of these Patriot League teams are playing some pretty good out of conference. Playing a pretty good out-of-conference schedule. So let's see how they do this upcoming season. So that was a lot of fun. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I appreciate everybody giving some good feedback so far on these breakdowns. And I'll probably get into the CAA coming up later this week. So stay tuned. All right, so that's a wrap on our 4th episode of the Faceoff Zone podcast already. Hopefully you had fun listening, and, as always, please do me a favor and tell a fellow Faceoff fanatic about this podcast. Let's try to keep it going. I cannot wait to dive more into this upcoming 2022 season, so please stay tuned. Again, if you haven't already, please give the Faceoff Zone YouTube channel a subscribe, so you can watch some fun face-off highlight videos of last season and this upcoming season. You can also follow me on Instagram at FO_zone for some fun breakdowns as well. And like I said earlier, I just really want to thank everybody for the support so far. And I'm looking forward to providing more coverage of the face-off position going into this 2022 season. So next episode, I'll be giving you guys my breakdown of the CAA conference. Some really good face-off guys in that conference as well. And then we certainly have some other good conferences to talk about moving forward. So as always, listen, I'll be hanging around all season long. And I will see you guys next time in the zone.